Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Will Reese, Director of CALS and with Next Level Sports, and we're excited to have you in our 5th edition of our CALS Conversation. We've got a great group today as we continue to work through all the things that go with COVID-19, and as we've moved through this series, every week, same topic, but new issues and challenges and steps we're taking. It's exciting to be here at this time as many of you are getting back into the office or getting ready to bring student athletes back on campus. Before we get started, I want to briefly touch on the nationwide conversation started by the murder of George Floyd. I'm sure most of you on here have seen our friend Tim Duncan, the athletic director at University of New Orleans, Twitter post from a couple days ago. If not, I would strongly encourage you to go check that out at Tim Duncan AD, where he shares some recent experiences of his. I actually had a conversation with Tim today, and Tim's been with us at Cal. I believe if not everyone, pretty close to everyone. We've seen him go through different jobs, and we're excited to welcome him as an athletic director and as a faculty member with us last year. And Tim's a friend, and I appreciate him and putting his experiences out there. I reached out to Tim today and had a conversation and said, hey, we just want to use this platform to engage and further this this conversation. So keep an eye out for that. We've got some stuff in the works. I know for myself, personally, I'm here to listen and learn. And I know that a lot of people in our CALS community, as well as in college athletics, are coming from the same place. So shifting gears to our panel today, as I said, we've got so many things going on with the reopening of many states. Purposely, we have a great panel here today, and purposely we have a Washington, we have an Ohio, we have a Connecticut, and a Florida. So we've got the country covered, and everybody, as far as where their states are at currently, are in a little different place. And so I think that'll bring a lot to the conversation. Really like to thank Scott Stricklin and Pat Chun and Julie for being with us. Scott and Pat have been completely awesome with CALS and have attended multiple times from multiple jobs and shared and served on our faculty. Julie has been with us and been involved, and we're excited for her to get an opportunity to serve on the faculty here in the future. She is just welcome to a new job. Here's a worldwide pandemic. Deal with this. So grateful to have you, and we're really grateful to have our friend Adrian Sweeney with us. Adrian is a COO at UConn. And Adrian has a awesome background and career path. She was with us a few weeks ago when we actually did the path, when we had a great breakout sessions with different people. I had a lot of great feedback from her. If you don't know Adrian, be sure to check her out. There's a great podcast online, and just her path is really interesting, and she's awesome. And I'm going to hand it over here to her now to introduce her panel and get us started on today's CALS conversation. Thanks everybody for being with us.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks so much, Will. I certainly want to thank you for your leadership and vision to have these CALS conversations going on during this quarantine and pandemic, and certainly for everything that you do for our industry to help cultivate leaders in this industry. We're excited to have this conversation today. I have the privilege of moderating a panel with 3 really awesome ADs in our industry. And I'll start with just a brief introduction, simply a name and where they're currently the athletic director, and we will dive into our questions. We certainly want this to be a dialogue. So if you have a question, the Q&A function is active in Zoom. And so I will be moderating, watching those questions as they come in, and we'll try to filter them into the questions that we already have prepared. So we hope everyone is here, ready to learn and ready to ask great questions of our panel. So I'll start off by introducing Pat Chun. I've had the opportunity to hear Pat speak before at the Charles Whitcomb Leadership Institute, the alumni weekend, and he shared really great insight there. And I know he'll share the same today. He's currently the athletic director at Washington State. Next, I would like to introduce Julie Cromer Peoples, who recently took over the role as the athletic director at Ohio University, and will be interesting to hear her insights as to how she has been managing the pandemic as a newly minted athletic director. She's also a very awesome accountability partner, and we graduated the Executive Institute together for women leaders. And lastly, I want to introduce Scott Stricklin, who is the athletic director at Florida, the University of Florida. And we are both Bulldog alum, and that's something I'm very proud of, Hail State. He can't really say that now, but I'm certainly glad to have him on the call today. So as we get started, let's talk about leaders are humans first. And sometimes that's often lost in translation. So as we start this conversation off, tell us a little bit about how you're leading yourself through this pandemic, because it's very difficult to lead others if you can't first lead yourself. So share with us, just from a genuine place, what are you doing to lead yourself amidst this pandemic, to effectively lead yourself? We'll start with Julie.
Well, so thank you for the introduction, and thank you to Will and others for the opportunity to be here and to join my friends Scott and Pat. I think, you mentioned I'm new to the gig, and so what's been interesting about how to manage myself through this is that I think we were turning the corner of about almost 6 months of my tenure in Athens as we then headed into the pandemic crisis. So for me, at this point, given a month of transaction, getting in and out of Athens, and a couple months on campus, and a couple months off campus.
I think we might be losing Julie. She did make us aware right before we started that there were thunderstorms heading into the area. And so it sounds like her connection is distorted right now. Julie, can you hear us? Okay, well, I'm gonna pass the ball to Pat. Will you pick up and tell us how you're leading, and hopefully Julie can come back in and we can hear the rest of her answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I echo Julie's thoughts, Adrian. Thanks for moderating this, and Will, thanks for putting this together. And it's always good to see Scott and Julie, assuming she comes back. The reality, your organization and its culture are really revealed in full operation when adversity hits. So if anything, during this time, you're just really reassured when you see the way your coaches respond, our senior leadership, our staff. Everyone understands what their responsibility is, and it's really our jobs as a leadership team, because as you guys know, these athletic departments are too big for one person to tackle everything. That it's been really gratifying to see our team really go to great lengths to make sure that we're delivering what we're supposed to deliver to our student athletes. So for me personally, the rhythm has been really unique simply because you're not traveling anymore. To be able to get in a normal sleep cycle, probably even work out a little bit more, because your morning starts out on your computer, and you could go on, you could be in shorts and a pullover and be at your computer by 8 a.m. having a smoothie at the same time, and that makes things easier. But when you think about what you had asked, really, if anything, the last week is really when it's gotten tough. I mean, what's going on in this country? I mean, you think about our industry today. And if prior to last week, 2 landscaping things were about to happen with name, image, likeness, and how we all recover and return from COVID-19, the social justice awakening that's happening probably supersedes in terms of importance with both those, and how we handle this as an industry going forward is really pivotal. So, this last week has been really, really difficult, tough. But also, even talking with our student athletes, even, I had talked to some last night, even motivating and empowering at the same time. But it's hard. I mean, these are the times where you'd rather be in the office around your student athletes, around your coaches. You still got to do things through Zoom and through cell phones. But like anything, we're going to continue to make the most of it. But all in all, I mean, we feel like we're in good shape and we're all chomping at the bit to get back to work.
Yeah, Pat, that was really well said, and you did a great job of kind of framing what's going on, and not just in athletics, but throughout America. But you're right, we had, 10 days ago, we thought name, image, and likeness and COVID were a plateful, and now we found out there's more that's going to have to be managed and handled and handled in a really thoughtful, appropriate way that really goes down to the very core of what we do, which is engage and care for starting young people, but also our staffs, and as a byproduct, our campus communities at large. So, Adrian, thanks for having us. It's good to see another Mississippi State person always. Really proud of what you're doing up at UConn. And I'm glad we got Julie back. Julie, I hope you're okay from the storms, and it doesn't like they've gotten you. One of the things that's really interesting about the period, the 2+ months that we all spent lockdown, depending on where you were. Florida, we were about 2 months, is the days were really grueling because the repetitiveness of it. One of the things that we all love about our, being in college athletics is, every day is a little bit different. You don't get stuck in a rut. And then once you go to a game, games are the ultimate unpredictability. There's no telling what's going to happen. Anyone can win. And you really get in that rhythm. And I enjoy that. I enjoy the every day being different, every week is unique. And all of a sudden we got into a situation where every day seemingly you're on the same Zoom calls with the same people discussing the same topic in the same setting. And so that, I think mentally that was more of a challenge than what going into it I would have anticipated. On the other side, I have 2 teenage daughters. One is a freshman in college who came home early, and the other in high school. And because, as Pat said, we were sleeping in our own bed and we weren't traveling, every night we had chances of family to kind of get together and watch a movie or do something that normally that time of year we would not have gotten to do. So there were some challenges mentally and emotionally at a personal level, but there were some benefits as well.
Thanks for sharing, Scott. Julie, would you like to jump back in? We didn't hear all of your answers, or perhaps if you can share just the things that you've been doing to lead yourself during this time.
Yeah, I'll be quick. And also, I just have to go on record as saying that's the fastest I've been booted from a panel in a long time. So probably also a good visual to, explain a little bit about what the first 6 or 7 months have been like, given the pandemic. I just think that it's important to commit to doing the things that to do to take care of yourself as a leader. And in this time, I think I've found that I have to be even more disciplined and double down on that because as I heard when I came back in, Scott's right, the days are long, and we find that we have to schedule every bit of communication and interaction, and we can't rely on some of those events and larger meetings and hallway conversations in the way we had before. So the days are long, they're filled with a lot of digital interaction that zaps our brains. And so I think as leaders, we have to just be sure that we're working out, we're eating well, we're getting the sleep, we're spending time with our families and recharging, because it's a different kind of challenge in having the stamina to get through a time like this. But it's critical so that we can be clear-headed in our decision making.
All right, thanks everyone for those answers. As we continue in this conversation, perspective is so powerful, and it's all about how you look at what we can't always control the hand we're dealt, but we can control how we play it. Will you all talk about perhaps one positive habit that you have developed as a result of COVID-19 and whether or not you think that habit will stick when we return to our new normal? And I'll start with Pat.
Well, when I think of probably the best positive habit I've developed is we have 3 daughters at home, high school, middle school, grade school. For a bunch of reasons, I've been alleviated of any academic duties in this homeschooling time for us. So I've been assigned a PE teacher for our 9-year-old, our youngest. So it's been nice. It's like what Scott had pointed out before. I mean, we've gotten into a routine where I'll go take the dog for a walk. She'll dribble a basketball. She's starting to get into basketball, which is nice. So we'll go dribble around the block and come home and shoot for 30 minutes or an hour. So that is something that I know if we weren't at home, I don't know, we would have still done it, just not as regimented or as much routine as we've had. So it goes back to, I think when you look at the things, we've been given the gift of time with our families. And I think for the first time for a lot of us, you can just take a breath and just really see, all right, here are some things that, it's just good to make some meaningful bonds and traditions with your kids that you'll be able to keep going forward, even when you get busier again, because it's too much fun not to do it.
Scott, what are your thoughts? Any positive habits you've picked up?
Yeah, I don't know that I can, really did anything different. I do think our society may change in a lot of ways after this, but, think about the time we save getting in a car, driving to work, back and forth every day, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, whatever. And, we've all gained several hours from that. And so I could see me, I've always been one of those guys. I felt like I had to be in there before, in the office before 8 o'clock, before everybody else got there, and leave after. And I don't know that I'm going to be that way going forward. Maybe doing a couple calls from home in the morning and coming in mid-morning may not be all bad. And there may be something healthy about not necessarily being chained to a clock like we normally are in the normal, quote unquote, normal world.
Absolutely. What about you, Julie?
I think for me, it's incorporating technology. Before this, I would have claimed to have been reasonably tech savvy, for my age and my role in the department, but I've definitely improved, and I've watched others in our department improve. So, I think, didn't realize how much technology was available to us. And now that the world is more comfortable in these spaces, even if they're not preferring virtual interaction, they can do it now. And I think it gives us all kinds of ways to stay connected with people beyond our department, with, donors of all ages who have figured out how to FaceTime and do Zoom calls and be connected in some of these ways that, we wouldn't be able to get 6 people, at least in my setting, we wouldn't be able to get 6 people to travel to go see a donor across the country. But we can have lunch virtually now and have a number of other coaches and even student athletes involved in making those connections. And I think some of our supporters have really taken to that and have really appreciated that. So I think it's technology and being smarter about how we can use it. We'll continue that even when we're back in person.
Awesome. So in this environment, of course, we all walk into the office every day. We have our mission, we have our vision, we have our values. We know what we're after, what we're trying to accomplish. Certainly the pandemic has not disrupted our mission and who we are and who we intend to be. Tell us a little bit about what core values have been driving your decision-making at this time. Have they held true? Have you had to adjust some, and/or have you had to change any of your strategic priorities as a result of COVID-19? And I'll start off with Scott, followed by Julie, and then Pat.
I don't know that we've had to adapt any of our core values. We kind of have an overriding mission. We kind of frame a lot of decisions around creating a championship experience with integrity. And it's not one or the other, it's both. To have a championship experience, you have to have integrity. And so we talk a lot about that. And so as we've gone through, conversations related to how to, what are we doing with our student athletes? How are we communicating with staff? What are we doing from a budgetary standpoint? We're also trying to make 12 months decisions. We really don't know what's going to happen in the next 12 days. Kind of having that as a filter, that idea of a championship experience with integrity as a filter for everything we do has really kind of created a North Star, if you will. And fortunately, that's not new. It's one of the things that I got to give Jeremy Foley a lot of credit for 2.5 decades prior to me coming to Florida, creating that culture. and it's really sustained us during this time. And you know, you understand when you're at a place like Florida how important your staff is, and how, you know, we have incredibly talented, hardworking people who are really committed to our student athletes and trying to create that experience. And so just trying to make decisions that impact them in a positive way. We're fortunate. We've not had to lay people off. We've not had to do furloughs. We're hoping to, you know, get on the other side of all this and that still be the case. But, you know, as I said, none of us really know what next week holds. But trying to make decisions that shows our people that they're valued and they're important, because there is going to come a time when we are on the other side of the Corona crisis, and we're going to need really good people to help us on the other side of that. And we're, you know, so if you already have them and you can make sure that they're taken care of during this time, so that when you come on the other side of it, they're ready to go. I think that's really key. And we've been fortunate that we've been able to kind of keep them engaged.
Well, we're sort of on the opposite end of that spectrum. We've had to make some difficult budget decisions. And so I think my response to that is that I'm not sure if the core values haven't changed, but I think we have spent a lot more time talking about them than we might otherwise have at this time. And so they have guided us through some incredibly difficult budget decisions that we are still making. And they've also, I think, given us an opportunity to talk about something that I will admit, as a new leader, I wish I would have come into this opportunity thinking about asking, and that is what really is central to our student athlete experience at Ohio. It's not going to be the same experience as one can have at Florida or at Washington State or at UConn. But what is ours and what is central to it? And so those discussions, I think, have been really beneficial to us. And then we've tried to make our budget reduction and resource reallocation moves based on the outcome of those discussions. And that has been an incredibly valuable and also unifying exercise for us at a time when other schools in the Group of Five conferences and even in our own conferences are making very difficult decisions about sports sponsorship and some other things. You know, we've been able to continue to go back to the essence of our student athlete experience and what we want to commit to continue to provide that.
The only thing I'll add is we, in August of last year, we launched our 5-year strategic plan. Prior to that was a pretty rigorous 13-month process of really identifying what our core values were and also redefining our mission statement. So I say that because when we were all sent home in March, really that it hit us really fast at how fortunate are we that we went through those types of exercises before this type of unexpected adversity hit. So as we're guiding ourselves through this, obviously you refer to your core values, or you conform to your core values whenever adversity hits. So just to be able to have a plan in place, and we even went through an exercise, I think it was a week and a half ago, we actually did a Zoom phase 2 retreat of our strategic plan, and that incorporates partners on campus as well. And it really kind of signifies to not only our internal team, but to our campus partners that, hey, even though this is different, we're still going to grind through this plan and hit the markers that we all set that we said we were going to hit, and also take this as an opportunity to kind of reevaluate, because like all of the schools, this budgeting process we're trying to finish it up right now. I mean, these are hard times for our entire industry, and tough decisions have been made and will continue to have to be made because, I mean, we're even when we all have to submit our budgets, no matter what cycle we're working with, we're nowhere near out of the dark period of this yet.
Yeah. Really tough times. I don't know if any of us ever imagined we would be having to engage leadership in this type of an environment, but certainly all think that we can come out on the other side of it better than we were having gone into it. You talked a little bit about, each of you, how you have led yourself during this pandemic. Can you share with the group how you have led your team and your staff during this pandemic? What particular things have you done to show effective leadership in helping your team to navigate COVID-19? And also, let us know, have you had to kind of change your communication strategies between groups, or how have you approached that from group to group that you're responsible for leading? I'll start that one off with Julie.
Well, I think we're in a unique situation because also the department is trying to get to know a new leader. And so, you know, there's never, I'm sure, a convenient time to go through what the country and the world are going through now. But I think for our department, I've really tried to be sensitive to the fact that if they had even had 6 more months to get to know me, we would be in a different place. We're still in that, you know, we're forming trust and we're getting to know one another. So I've doubled down on, you know, additional time, face-to-face if possible, by phone, as a second option, and then, you know, text or email. And I'm more, you know, I'm a text and phone kind of person, on the move a lot. I often give out my mobile number and say, text this and do that before you call or email, because, you know, I go to email last. And, you know, now I'll be more of a FaceTime and Zoom person, even going forward. I think transparency has been really important, very critical as well, but transparency and frequency of communication also takes more time. So I've literally budgeted more time for those interactions. I think that's important. We've also pulled in people in our department who have never been involved in discussion and decision-making before, and use this as an opportunity to, at a minimum, bring them to the table. Some aren't ready, some are, but we've used it as a chance to invite them into the dialogue, and that includes our student athletes. And so in some ways, I think it's about budgeting the time for it. It's about how you do it, but it's also about bringing more people in. And we've done all of that in the last 10 weeks, more so than it sounds like at least had been done prior to my arrival in the department.
Pat, what are your thoughts on that?
We've taken, I mean, really, especially early on, once it kind of hit you fast that people were going to get zoomed out, or at least I was getting zoomed out. We focused really on the professional development piece. I would argue I'm a leadership junkie. So, you know, really challenging ourselves, challenging our coaches to try to come up with programming, bringing in speakers. You know, we talked about you know, typically in our industry, you'd have to be out of a job to have this much time to read, to study, to learn, to hone your craft. So let's make sure we're utilizing this time and really giving our coaches some additional tools to put in their tool belt to help them be better coaches and professionals. So that's where really we spend a really significant amount of time and just lining up the right people to just try to just give our coaches and some of our staff pause to think and really reflect on, you know, whenever we reemerge from this, how we're going to be better teammates, better athletic administrators, better coaches, and really improve our whole athletic department through that.
Scott, you know, Pat just made a good point about people being zoomed out, and, you know, it's more difficult to have that sense of connectivity in this environment. Can you talk about any things that you all have done at the University of Florida to help foster a sense of engagement and connectedness with your staff? Any unique things that you all are doing in addition to some of the things that Pat just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're doing anything out of the ordinary, but one thing we did as soon as we sent everyone home in March is we just decided we were going to do regular constant communication with our staff via emails. And so we started out being a daily email, then it went to 3 days a week, and I think we settled on 2 days a week. But just you know, during this time when you're not seeing people, to Julie's point earlier about you're not seeing people in the hall, you're not having those casual interactions, and because there was so much information flowing in the news media, but none of it really specific to anyone's school, we thought it was really helpful to kind of have a way to reach out on an ongoing basis. Here's the latest information. Here's what's going on in the department. Here's number of positive cases on campus. Whatever the interesting topic was at the time. Hey, the SEC just said just agreed on this. Whatever, and really, I felt like that kind of helped keep a connection with people, because I would have staff email back after that they wouldn't otherwise, and it kind of gave a natural connection point. And so I think the communication piece was really good. And we all talk about that. You can't communicate enough, and there always needs to be better communication, and probably taught me a good lesson. That you were asking earlier, what's a good habit that we could do going forward? That's probably one that was really illustrated during this time of how important it is to communicate to your staff on a regular basis.
The sense of uncertainty that COVID-19 has created for all of us, so not even just for our staff, our student athletes, for us as administrators. We don't have all of the answers, and we learn new information every single day that can alter perhaps plans that we had yesterday. How are you all managing the uncertainty in your departments, which can often lead to fear or anxiety or just worry about what's going to happen? Can you talk about what seem to be the greatest concerns of like your coaches and your student athletes, and how you are managing those concerns in this uncertain environment? And I'll just toss that one up for whoever wants to jump in.
I think what you find out is there's no one set answer there. Some people want to get back at it, and their concern is when can they do it. Some people want to make sure that they still have a paycheck and health benefits, and that's really important. And for others, it's, hey, when I do come back, is it going to be safe to do so, and what's going to happen, and who else being tested. So I just think it's probably representative of our nation, right? Everybody's as a different part of the spectrum here, related to how they're processing all this. And I think being able to goes back to that communication piece, to listen to your staff enough, even if it's not me listening to every single person on staff, talking to people, that make sure somebody's reaching out to everybody on some level and understanding what those concerns are, and not just assuming but really doing the research to understand, I think is really important.
Information isn't as readily available as people want. That's the other challenge. And we're doing tons of contingency planning and tons of scenario planning. And when you're talking about hypothesis, it's you could talk your way into circles for a long time. So I think when it's all said and done, to have you need people to understand their roles within an organization. When it's, for us, it's making sure people know, hey, this is a time to speak up. Sometimes it's time to listen. Sometimes it's time to be patient. But the communication piece has been an opportunity and a challenge at the same time, just because, everybody's worried about the future. It's like Scott said, it's a full spectrum of emotions and full spectrum of needs, and people want to be heard, and people want some certainty. And we understand, we all have to lead from the front as athletic directors, but the way the world has been moving, early on, the world would change like at the speed of light in 24 hours. And then the decisions you made the day before were all ultimately, useless the following day. So the communication piece has been a challenge. And, I look at myself, I think about our entire staff. I wrote down Scott's idea about the weekly emails. It's like, there are better ways to do it. And, fortunate for forums like this where I could pick up stuff as well.
Any thoughts on that, Julie?
I think the only element I'll add that hasn't been mentioned is just we've seen an uptick, particularly in the last week, from parents who are trying to figure out the safest environment for their sons and daughters. And so what's interesting is a few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, we were talking about what kind of outreach we need to our parents and what kind of opportunities we need for them to understand our return plans and, the measures that will be taken and what the best ways to get that out for those who are concerned. And, so people were worried about traveling their sons and daughters, back to campus. That's turned in the last week to how soon can I get my son or daughter back to campus, for a variety of reasons. And so I think it's a wrinkle that for us has emerged, particularly in the last 10 days or so.
So Julie, I'll start back here with you, because I want to talk about how difficult of the decisions that have had to be made, how difficult they have been. I know certainly you have had to do some of that with furloughs or things of that nature on your campus. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you have approached that decision making and the delivery of that message, to your staff when you're dealing with, of course, it's human beings and it's a really hard topic. How do you navigate that as a leader and approach it?
I think you just have to be honest, and you have to be as transparent as you can, and you have to understand that people often need to hear things, especially bad news, multiple times or incrementally in order for them to really understand or absorb it. And so we've been very intentional about not waiting until the last minute and communicating everything, 5 pieces of big information at one time, but instead managing more of a steady flow and repetition, warning people that some difficult decisions are coming, explaining to them, as I answered a couple of answers before about, how we're going about evaluating where we'll put our resources and including them in that conversation. We have a smaller department than Scott and Pat, so we were able, in communicating our staff reductions and furlough decisions from May, we were able to segment the department and have Zoom or FaceTime meetings with everyone in the department, whether it was by sport team and coaching staff and support staff or unit. And that took a lot of time. And that was the majority of, I would say, a 5 or 6 day week, but it was really valuable. And I think the other thing is we were strategic about our decision making. We saw some of the budget challenges we have on our campus and at our level of the industry have been a long time in the making. They're not just because of COVID-19. And so we had been talking about some of our threats already. And it was a continuation of a dialogue that began. They're very difficult decisions to make, but I think, again, you have to think about what is the essence of the student-athlete experience on your campus and get to know that intimately. And what is it that we really have to do in order to lean into our strengths as a department and also deliver that experience. And for me, now that I'm no longer in the SEC, that's very different than I would have answered 12 months ago at a different institution. Where we travel and how we get there and who gets to go. And for us in the coming year, it will even be the number of competitions that we'll engage in. All of these things are being sacrificed, but if you can explain to your coaches why they're being sacrificed, for us, that's to protect scholarship and opportunities for young people to get to campus, to engage with them, to learn and develop as individuals, and then, to graduate. Well, you can do that without going to Florida 3 times in the off season for baseball. You can do that without flying across the country from Ohio to an event in California. And so we've talked in those terms, what are we giving up, but what are we preserving or getting with that action?
So Pat and Scott, as we think about the environment and the uncertainty that the environment has bred, and certainly it has some impact to team morale, what are some of the things that you all are doing to help manage or uplift your team morale if it has suffered some at this point, or keep it up if it never waned? What are some strategies and things that you all are doing to address team morale in light of everything we're facing?
Well, I think part of it goes to that communication piece. The hard part of morale is right now is, it's not where it needs to be. And especially with what's happened this last week, I think the strategies and the purpose behind morale has also changed significantly. Based on what, I echo a lot of the things Julie just said, but I would say as we all navigate through this, and I know Scott's there, I'm sure Julie's there, but I mean, it's critical. I'm fortunate our senior staff has done a wonderful job in terms of having, we're all conscientious of having the pulse of our department. And I'm blessed with an extraordinary senior staff that keeps a great pulse of the department. We're constantly communicating, constantly trying to forecast things that our department needs. We're trying to serve others because we know we all collectively have to serve our student athletes. But this job, especially during times like this, are too big just for the AD. So I just look at where we're at Washington State. I'm sure the departments you're in are the same. But I look at Ann McCoy and Brian Blair, Chris Park, Mitch Straub, Matt Kleffner, Thad Hathaway, all of our senior leaders, and just the work they've done just to make sure, they'll be the ones to tell me, hey, Pat, we need to get this communication out, or Pat, you probably need to send this out. So it's been a really good time from a team cohesiveness part, just understanding that, hey, we lead from the, and like any great culture, it starts at the top and it rises from the bottom. I'm really been really secure in how we've operated, knowing that, hey, it's not going to be perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but when we come out of this, we feel like we've covered most of the needs of our department. But the difficult decisions are ongoing, and that's not going to end.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is the culture of the department really gets tested during times like we've been going through. And this is not the time to create that culture, right? If it's not, it can be exhibited during this time, but it's hard to create it during this time, I think. And so the sense I've gotten from feedback from our staff and our coaches is really one of understanding. They get it. They know this is unique. They know this is, and I'm mainly talking about the virus here. They understand that this is beyond anyone's control, and that we need to, we're managing as best we can. And I haven't heard complaints. I haven't heard, people in bad spirit. The great thing about working with people in athletics is for the most part, everyone has a let's figure it out mentality, right? That's what every coach, when they step on a field with their team, that's what they're doing. They're trying to figure it out, and game plans have to change, in the middle of the first quarter sometimes, and you've got to keep rolling. And so I really feel like we're surrounded by people who are accustomed to that mindset. So I think that's real positive. And, hopefully once we get back, there'll be a real sense of appreciation for what we get to do. I know I'm going to have a sense of appreciation the next time I get to see one of our teams compete. And, it's crazy to think about. I saw a picture from 3 months ago. We had packed house at a basketball game, over 10,000 people. That was 3 months ago. We're not scheduled to play a football game on campus for another 3 months. So just like, a lot can change either way. And I think this time is probably going to give us a greater appreciation once we do get back on the other side.
Absolutely.
Adrian, if I could add, and Scott made me think of this, and I've said this early on, I've said it repeatedly to our staff and our coaches specifically, is Washington State does have a very different budget than Florida. We pride ourselves in how efficient we operate, specifically in the Pac-12 and in the Power 5. So I remind our coaches, we're built for times like this. So as we emerge from this, as we're trying to deliver hope and positivity, we believe at Washington State that, hey, we're going to come out ahead of this, because the Pac's going to have to come back to us a little bit, because everyone's going to have to operate efficiently across our league or across our industry. So it's part of, when you talk about morale, it's just making sure the seat we're in, and I know our senior administrators are echoing this, reaffirming this, but hey, we're a bunch of fighters. We're a bunch of blue collar people. We have a lot of grit in our athletic department, and times like this, these times are built for people with those characteristics, and we feel like we'll be at a position of strength when we come out of this.
Yeah, certainly hope people can hear the importance of leadership in a time like this, the importance of communication, of transparency, of being, open and honest, and being as engaged as you can be with your team. Recognizing the importance of having mission, vision, and values to guide your decision making, and ensuring that you are not only as a leader trying to foster the culture of the department, but if you're not in a leadership position, or what I will call a formal leadership position, that you are doing your part to try to help uphold those values and espouse those values within the department to help get through a difficult time like this. I want to shift a little bit now the conversation to contingency planning, because that's something we'll all have had to do, probably in ways that we've never done before. With much uncertainty and not a lot of answers, we all have all different kinds of models. So I think about science, and it tends to be exact. And I think about art, and it tends to be unique. It tends to be abstract. And I think we can see right now in our industry and in the nation that people are moving at a different pace. They're moving to a beat of a different drum based on where they are, based on what's happening in their state or in their conference or on their campus. And I want to ask each of you a question to just talk about what has your process of contingency planning looked like? But I'm going to ask each of you from a different angle. So if I can, I'll start with Scott. I want to ask you, what has contingency planning looked like for the University of Florida as it relates to reintegration of student athletes to your campus?
Well, there's really been three main groups that we've engaged with to help with that. One is 3 days a week, I'm on a call with campus leadership, president's cabinet, to talk about what, just that. How are we going to serve, get on the other side of this, and what does reintegration look like? And it's interesting. I went back and looked at my notes. That call began the first week in February. And at that point, I think there were single-digit cases in America. But we have an unbelievable med school here and medical center, and those people started signaling to us early we have to be on top of this. And so the folks at UF Health have been a part of those calls, and they've helped guide our conversation. Chip Howard on our staff, one of our executive associate ADs, has been leading. We initially called it a continuity group, and now it's a return to activity group. But that group has met once or twice a week throughout this time for our department to try to figure that question of reintegration out. And then obviously on a more global level, the ADs of the Southeastern Conference have been having regular calls, 2 or 3 times a week with Commissioner Sankey, trying to work through this process as well. So those are the three groups that kind of led our decision-making and our thought process. And even within that, we had a smaller group within our department that involved our head sports medicine officials and our strength coaches about once we began talking about when voluntary in-person activity could begin, what's that going to look like, and how are we actually going to do that? And on the same way, we've had another group that's been working on when we do start playing games, what is the reintegration with our fans going to look like? And obviously we're a lot further along on the athlete coming back to campus than we are the fan piece, but we have some very specific groups working just on those questions right there.
So Julie, I want to ask you the same question, but from the aspect of budgeting. So we all know, we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. We're all certainly hopeful that we will be, back in the stands, competing with fans in the stands to some degree, but we don't know what that looks like. Can you talk to us about what contingency planning has looked like for your department from a budgeting standpoint?
It's actually evolved. I think probably 6 or 8 weeks ago, I would have said we have, contingency A and contingency B and arguably C, and they were sort of discrete models and, different spreadsheets, if you will. And I think things are so fluid. What we have determined is that it actually is more efficient, at least for us, to have components. And so, rather than having discrete models, we have a COVID component on the expense side. We have various levels of potential reductions on the revenue side, and they're associated with what those sources of revenue are. And so we're mixing and matching those components on a pretty regular basis, as opposed to creating A, B, and C and trying to guess how things will align, because I think we've come to realize that we may not be able to imagine yet even exactly how they all realign. Something as simple as, the cost of testing and the requirements of testing is so fluid. How can you make a budget model around that item alone? Even if you have 28 derivatives, we still don't know if you've landed on the right one. So with so much influx, we've gone to components, and we're shifting those components on a, I would say, a couple times a week at this point, trying to figure things out as renewal numbers and some other things start to come in to closer view with season ticket deadlines and that sort of thing. We're able to start to piece some of it together. And then, we have Go teams also, like Scott mentioned, we have an internal and an external, and they're still trying to estimate the support they will need based on whatever the guidance is for large scale gatherings. What the proportion of your stadium may be, what the distancing requirements may be, ingress and egress, and stations inside and out are all up in the air. And so we're just mixing and matching those components. And I think that has actually helped us to be more responsive and ultimately, I think, provides more realistic targets as we get deeper into the summer and have to lock some of that in for the next fiscal year.
Yeah, and then thanks for sharing, Julie. Perhaps what I'm asking you, Pat, it may be a combination of both what Scott and Julie both answered, but also adding to that football and fall sport planning. What has contingency planning looked like for your department, your conference, and how you're approaching what the fall may look like?
Well, our league went into action right away, so that's a credit to our conference, and they've really done a good job in creating committees specific for football and for fall sports that incorporate coaches and administrators. Brian Blair sits on the one for football, and McCoy for all the other fall sports. And then we, like Scott's league, we've been meeting with a lot of regularity. We're down in our league now to twice a week with our commissioner and his staff. And then we actually started a 1 day a week AD only call, which has been really, really helpful. Fortunate to be in a league where we're very friendly, very collegial with each other. And with so much going on, we just felt like it was a good opportunity to just idea share and benchmark off of each other. So, our league's done a great job in building committees, consistent communications, making sure that we're working with the medical people. So that's been a big part of it. And then from a campus side, I mean, Scott from his Bulldog days, he knows my boss very well. As you would imagine, Scott Kirk's done an extraordinary job in setting up our university for success and creating communication lines and order in terms of how we return back to campus. And, we're a very collaborative type of institution. So even on the 2 cabinet meetings we have each week, but we'll be the first group other than research that's going to be back on campus, but they really never left. So just seeing how our presidents set us up at least for success, and we'll keep going down the road. But, this is where, as an organization, everyone's got to work toward a common goal. And that's, with our conference, with our government affairs people, with our campus leadership. But fortunately for us, we're really 2 really great environments here at Washington State. Good.
Thanks for sharing that. One thing that COVID-19 has certainly made us do in that is change course. And I think that's an attribute to who we are in college athletics. We are great in many ways at being flexible and adjusting and adapting. And Scott alluded to it. That's what our coaches have to do whenever they are going out to coach or, scouting. They're figuring out the right strategy, and they have to make adjustments in stride or in coaching. And so I want to talk about a little bit about how COVID has caused us to shift in some of the areas. And I certainly don't want to leave this conversation without talking about the people who make it possible for us to have a job, and that's our student athletes. And so I want to pose to the group, how has COVID-19 made you change the way in which you support your student athletes? And what has been your targeted messaging to your student athletes during this time? And that one's a toss-up.
I don't know how much COVID has changed how we communicate with our student athletes, because we've always, I think everyone in the industry knows why we're in this. If anything, I'd argue the last 7 to 8 days have really changed what's important in what we communicate, and have brought things to the forefront that really need to be addressed before we move forward as with our student athletes. But if anything, not being around our student athletes, our coaches, not being with them on campus, not having them around, I think if anything just reprioritizes how special this moment is. And I think we all have broken hearts from the seniors that couldn't finish the years they had, and we're not going to be able to appropriately say goodbye to people that we've gotten to know over the last couple of years until they come back to visit on campus. But how we communicate, I don't know if that's changed much, although we probably do more. It's like Scott said, we'll probably use Zoom more. I'm always looking for the perfect time to have a coaches meeting. Well, with Zoom now, I think we can find a perfect time to have a coaches meeting. So I think with how we do meetings going forward, if anything, the technology will help because there won't be as much, I guess hang-ups about using technology going forward.
Yeah, I think those are really great points from Pat. I would say we have definitely integrated our student athletes into our discussions and decision making more. We were on the path to do that anyway. COVID has accelerated that. We have student athletes on our internal and external Go teams. We have a group that's really active in helping us create some of our activities around, social justice and human rights issues that has activated again here recently, even more so. So I think in a lot of ways, we've just used the opportunity to give them additional spaces and platforms for their voice. And in a lot of ways that has helped us then when we've needed to communicate some of the difficult decisions we're making and also some of our return planning initiatives. And so I think getting them involved in a way that they had never been involved before has been really beneficial to us.
I don't really have anything more to add other than, I think it's probably been an adjustment for our coaches more than our administration as far as engaging with athletes when, the virtual meetings and the chalk talks over Zoom has probably done more to accelerate the learning among the more experienced members of our society on technology than anything else has.
Awesome. Well, I know that we all had our scripted questions and things we wanted to cover, and we certainly have jumped around and navigated those a little bit, and I think we're running out of time. We had one question from the group, and I think it ties in very closely here with the conversation about messaging to the student athletes. And Pat has alluded to this multiple times. Julie just talked about, integrating their students and having conversations about social justice. What have you shared with your student athletes in light of what's going on in our society right now over the last few weeks? What has your messaging been to your student athletes and your staff, and specifically your African American or Black American students and staff during this time?
It's like Scott said, your culture is exposed during times like this. We're fortunate we have a bunch of student athletes that formed a Black Student Athlete Association probably about a year and a half ago. So I met with them last night. If anything, really quickly, it's just a commitment from me directly, speaking on behalf of our athletic department, that we're going to work with them to come up with some solutions and make sure that there's action behind these words that we're all putting out. But, we all need to get back together face to face, but I told them we're going to keep talking, but we're going to have some action when they get back. And, the way the world is right now, I think now is the time, as we talk about all these important initiatives and changing the world, now's the time to do this because this has been going on way too long. But it's really that commitment word that, hey, we are going to work at this together.
Yeah, I would say the same. We've been, we issued a public statement, which is really important to this generation. I think, helping coaches of different generational cohorts understand that for young people, making a statement on Twitter or on another platform is activism, and helping connect that to their desire for action has been a lot of what our dialogue has been around. And so, we've done that. We also had a forum last night, and we really opened it up to the students, and they're guiding us in some of particularly our external activities. And so coming out of that discussion, we're matching students with other members of our department, either coaches or staff who are interested in some of the same activities, whether it's voter registration or peaceful demonstration or allyship or dialogue or whatever it may be. We're creating teams within the department, and we're gonna, use this as an opportunity while our students frankly have the time due to the pandemic that they may otherwise not have to be directly engaged in some of these activities, give them a chance to, learn as they lead and foster that for them. And so in addition to the things Pat would say, I just want to underscore that being active is really important, and not just saying that we're going to be active. And so that's been a key part of our messaging to them.
Yeah, to play off that, the term I keep thinking in my head is a continuous action. This can't be, COVID, hopefully we're addressing while it's here, and hopefully we get on the other side of this as a society and we don't have to think about COVID anymore. The social justice issue should not be that way. It should be one of continuous ongoing action. And right now, a big part of that action is, I think, listening and then allowing everyone to have their voice. And I know that's not enough, but I just think that's got to be a part of it. And part of it is educating. And I don't mean us educating them. I mean, I need to be educated. I need to challenge myself to be more educated. I need to challenge myself to have those uncomfortable conversations. It's interesting though, as we've had the SAC Zoom calls and I've reached out to, a number of our staff, and some people are really affected and want to talk about this, and others aren't in that place. And so I think, again, giving them room to be comfortable with where they are, I think is really important. And hopefully they know as leaders that we care and that we want to help them, not just individually, but collectively as student athletes. And then beyond that, as a society, try to figure out a way to continue to move forward here and to not just say it'll go away or this is business as usual. Because I don't think this is an inflection point that we're all going to look back on as being really significant, as a chance for all of us as Americans to make a difference.
Thank you for those thoughts. So I'm going to go into rapid fire mode. This is our last question. And I'm just going to simply say, crisis has the potential to change all of us. How has the most recent events, whether it's the pandemic, what happened with George Floyd, just everything that's going on in our society, how would you say that this has changed you, and leave any final remarks with our participants today? Julie, you're up.
Wow, that's a big question. I think I'll need time. I tend to be a reflective person. So in some ways, today I'm reflecting on, what was going on in my life 2 years ago. So I would just say, I think, I do think it has expanded my capacity as a leader. There are a lot of things happening at one time, and that was true for all of us before now. Who knew that we could manage and lead through so many things and so many challenges at one point? And I think just when we think that we're at our capacity, something else develops. So for me, I would say my immediate response is it's expanded my threshold, but I think it's an opportunity. And so it's a lot of events really from the last 10 or 12 weeks have been tragic. They have been revelatory. They have been mind-blowing in some cases, and in other cases you learn they are what other people knew was coming all along. And so to try to synthesize all of that and absorb it will take years for us to know what it really means, but it's a true opportunity for us to lean into our strengths and into our humanity and into our purpose. And as everyone has said already on the call, come out on the other side and be better for it. And I think if you walk into it with any other mindset other than something along those lines, you can be defeated and you can miss a tremendous transformational opportunity. And so why let ourselves do that?
All right, Scott?
Yeah, I think it probably just reinforced lessons I already knew. But chief among them is I am the least important person in this organization. The only chance we have is because we have really talented people throughout our organization, among our student athletes, on this campus, the health professionals that we lean on. We lean on so many people right now to even take the next step, and it's humbling, and it's there's probably a reason why great leaders have built have a high level of humility, is because they recognize that. And so sometimes we may get in a habit that thinking that we're more important to this overall concept and enterprise than we really are. And if this has been a really good lesson, a reminder that that's not the case, and we need to value the people that we've been blessed to have around us.
Just
you.
reiterate what Julie said, mindset does matter, and hope is our superpower, and we have to instill hope in ourselves, our coaches, and most especially our student athletes as we go forward, because there's a lot of work that needs to get done for the rest of this year, and I know we're all committed to doing it, but hope is going to fuel that.
All right. Well, certainly I want to thank each of our panelists again, and thank Will for his leadership for allowing the opportunity for this CALS conversation to happen today about, leadership amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, and also allows us to shed some light on some of the things that are going on in our society in terms of social justice and how we can be a part of promoting the change that needs to happen in the world today. Thanks to each of our participants for logging on and listening to the panel, and I hope we all took away some of the great wisdom and have the charge and commitment internally to or personally to be the change that we want to see in the world and to be who we know we are in college athletics, and that is really gritty, resilient, innovative, smart, thoughtful individuals who have a great tool through athletics to help change the world. So thanks each of you again for attending, and I think that concludes our session for today.
Thank you, Adrienne. Nice work.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Adrian.